All right, autonomous living technologies, intern training today. First of all, thank you guys all for joining. Um, we at Olytech are, well, first of all, we're a small company. We're about six people who have been very missionally involved with the company for a couple of years since its inception. We are thrilled to death this summer to have a group of interns. Many from California, from across the country, who are taking an interest in what we're trying to bring to market in assistive technology. So, as a training today, we're just going to look at the raw video of what we presented at the CSU Northridge Assistive Tech Conference in Anaheim in March of this year. And I'm going to keep the sound off and talk through it, and we'll probably have some questions from time to time. I did want to highlight we had a wonderful creative genius graphic artist named David Watts who volunteered his time and talents, and he built out our booth presence for us. Just one little challenge. I asked, so this is our heroine who David created. And he created these icons for us that talk about the different applications, the different types of uses for Cato that we're focused on as a company. I asked AI to come up with a name for our heroine, and it gave me a couple, but I don't think any ever stuck. So if any of you creative interns have an idea for a name, let me know. There might be a T-shirt for you in the selection. But as we kind of look at our presence at the CSUN conference, what we wanted to create, and I'm going to focus just a second on kind of the big picture ideas, controlling your world without lifting a finger. Our icons range from power chairs to smart TVs, computers, home automation systems, hospital beds, feeding devices, etc. And our focus is to provide a universal controller that is able to operate each of these devices. In some cases, a user may prefer to have 2 or 3 or 4 Cato available to them. But the idea that you can manage multiple things with a single Cato is a big focus of our development efforts. If you can see here, we talk about being an affordable alternative to eye gaze. For any of you who are familiar with eye gaze technology, it's not very accurate. It's very expensive. It gets easily disrupted by things like shadows, ultraviolet light, etc. Don't try to use it outside. You can't. With our Cato device, we use motion and Bluetooth. So there's not disruption in the environment. In fact, we've used our devices at multiple trade show floors where there was lots of electronic feedback in the area, and we had no disruptions at all with it. Now, what we wanted to focus on, and I'll get there in just a second, what we wanted to focus on for the booth was a day in Spero's life. So our founder, Spero, was diagnosed with ALS in 2019, shifted his focus to using the right amount of AI for the job, putting AI on an edge device, not in the cloud, and leveraging gyroscopes, accelerometers to create an inertial measurement unit, an IMU, that would use motion and Bluetooth to be able to control devices. Now, this screen we're going to get back to in a couple of minutes is Spero's both his home entertainment console and his development environment, and it's all in one place. The other things you'll see here, they're a little bit fuzzy, but we'll see more of them in a moment. This is an OB feeding arm. So we're going to demonstrate controlling the OB feeding arm with Cato. And this guy that you're going to see in the demo right now, Spero's daughter Thea is going to show it, is a motor. And as I mentioned earlier, no animals were harmed in the filming of this video. It is a stuffed cat that we hang in the basket. But Spero at home has a track system in his ceiling that is motor controlled, and he's able to use Cato. In this case, Thea is tapping once, twice, or thrice for up, down, or stop. And it emulates what Spero does at home by using the motor system to call a harness to come over and to be able to attach into the harness. Now, Spero's going to enter the game here, and he's going to demonstrate for a couple of minutes what he does on that home setup. And does anybody remember how big his setup is at his actual home environment? So, wow. Uh-oh, I saw Sandra. I saw Sandra getting ready to answer.
I think you said something like 85 inches.
Yeah, so in his home environment, and I'm going to pause this for a second, we used a 55-inch screen in our booth, day in Spero's life. He's got an 85-inch at home, but he uses things like Apple Stage Manager and Universal Control to be able to run multiple different types of windows on the monitor and open and present them on the monitor as he needs access to them. So here for a couple of minutes, you're going to see he's going to pop up and keep up with soccer scores around the world. I don't know what his deal was with soccer. This was during March Madness. I kept asking for basketball scores, and he's like, "No, I'm watching soccer." I think it's because Michigan was so bad in basketball this year, he just couldn't stomach it. Um, please notice here he's in a development console. So he's using the same environment for entertainment as well as productivity and development. But there's a keyboard here. It's a custom keyboard. Um, what we demoed at CSUN was focused on an Apple accessibility environment that used things like universal control. One of the really awesome tools Apple provides with a MacBook is a panel editor, which allows you to create a custom keyboard attached to any application you open. So you'll notice as he opens different applications, the keyboard's going to look different. When you customize a keyboard, you can remove all the letters, all the numbers, and you can just do a 3x3 or a smaller kind of panel that has shortcut functions in it. And we do have some videos that help teach people how to do that. And we do some of that with training. But you'll see as Spero jumps from application to application, the keyboards will change. So as a company, that's not our Cato magic. That's not our inertial measurement unit, but it's something. It's their best practice is that it's incumbent for us to be able to share and to provide training so people can get the most productive use out of their setup. So we have some tutorials of how to set up the Apple environment with multiple monitors, how to use the same Apple ID to get universal control across an iPad, an iPhone, a MacBook, all at the same time. And Spero's putting lots of this into action as he kind of demonstrates what he does on a daily basis. Now he's back to watching movies. Hang on, I have written down here what times I'm supposed to go to. I think if I fast forward to about 6 minutes, let's get up here a little closer. He would have been demonstrating um, use of different tools that he has on a daily basis. But here we get to a point, he'll have an incoming call. So whether it's FaceTime or Google Voice, once again, it's just set up in the same console, and he hears the phone ring, and he's able to pop up. And it was a plant. It was me calling him at the show just to make sure he was on track. But he's able to dive in and answer the call, and just a variety of things you can do in this environment, all with the same Cato. Um, and we'll talk a bit more about what it means to use the same Cato in all these different environments. Now let me stop this at a better place. I mentioned earlier that we also do the OB feeding arm. This is co-founder Michael Fierro. And Michael has Cato attached to his glasses. You could wear it on a wrist, like with a watch band. You'll see it in Spero's shoe in just a moment. But we've connected to this OB feeding arm, and Michael is going to be selecting different bowls to have the spoon pull bites of food out of. And in this case, they were Hershey Kisses. And Michael's using gestures, so nods, head tilts, etc., to be able to control the feeding device. Now, Michael cheats and picks it up and puts it back. You're going to see Spero when Michael puts Cato in Spero's shoe, and normally we would suggest attaching with a 3M strip or something like that. We just kind of stuck it in Spero's slipper. But you'll see that the motion is not dependent upon being attached to glasses and that specific orientation. Spero is able to emulate the gestures and the movements with his foot, with it attached to his shoe, so that he's able to control the OB feeding arm as well. I'm going to show you one more piece here. Any questions at this point before we kind of go on and see the iPad and the power chair? Okay. I'm going to move forward a bit. I think I'm going to 9 minutes. And here we come around. Michael's going to set up in a different chair. One thing we have to be careful to tell people, while Spero with Cato designs different types of packaging to house Cato, and while this clips into a pair of glasses, he's got an ear clip version. You can just hang over an ear. There's another one to attach like this. Spero also designs these really cool little arms that append to his power chairs. And when we go to a place like CSUN, people will come in and go, "Whoa, where did you buy that? Where can I get one of those?" And the problem is Spero made it in his home office, and he would love to stop and make one for everybody that asked, but we'd never get Cato built if he did that. So he built this arm. iPad Pro is in place. And just to give you an idea, it's a different accessibility interface than a MacBook. There'll be a control center pop up here on the top, and Michael's got to wake some things up and get it attached and so on. But let's see while he's getting it attached, I think he's going to pop this little control center. And when he does, I'll pause it. All right. Well, so let me stop sharing for now. We're still recording, but let me just ask: are there any questions anybody has that that I can answer based on what we saw today that I should elaborate on? Oops. Yes, Sandra.
Yeah, so I think my main question is like regarding setup and configurability specifically. As you said, um, it sounds like Cato is able to provide a lot of different functionality depending on like what the user specifically needs. So it can control a device that might be unique to the needs of the current user. Um, in your experience, how long does it take for an individual user to kind of fine tune how best to use Cato for them? How long is the learning process? How steep is the learning curve? And what does Ollie do to kind of help in that process?
Awesome. Great question. Um, I'm gonna give you a two-part answer. um, if you're using Cato as a pointer only, and you're relying on the native capabilities of a MacBook or an iPad that has very robust accessibility tools built in, what you're doing quite simply is learning how to navigate a pointer, which is very simple. It's, you're going to be doing that in an hour, but you've got to know how you're going to configure those tools on the Apple side. And that depends on what type of app you want to run that you need to work with. So it's helpful to have working experience with the app and know, does dwell to click work? Am I going to need to be able to scroll down a page? So do I want to click it so it scrolls automatically? There are a lot of configurable tools on the Apple side, and it can take weeks or a month to get comfortable with an app and making sure you have things set up that are usable for you. Now, that was pointer related and leveraging what's on the system side of what you're controlling. When you're using gestures with Cato, um, I had a gentleman in training who had very limited mobility. He spent an hour trying to get comfortable with the gestures, with the nods, the tilts, etc. And he got very tired. It was tiring. Now we build in some really cool dynamic mouse controls to make it possible for people to get to the corners of screens without working too hard. But when you're executing gestures, it can be tiring. After an hour, he was very tired. But then he chuckled and I said, "How long did it take you to learn to use eye gaze?" And he said, 6 months. And I said, "Look, in 6 days, we're going to have you comfortable with the gestures in our environment. So there's effort, there's work, but it's not nearly as hard as learning other tools. And it's because of the precision of control that you have over the cursor and the ability to be able to execute the gestures." Did that answer your question?
Yeah, definitely, certainly.
Awesome. Thank you. Allie, yes.
Um, so I had two questions. The first one, I was just wondering like how setting up the interface is different for something that has a screen, like an Apple product that has that system manager, and then something that doesn't have like a screen like the feeding hand.
Yes. Um, That's interestingly one of the things Tyler's working on in his internship work this summer, because we'll be replacing switch functions with Cato. And typically devices with switch that you use switches for don't have a user interface to map to like an Apple does. Um, that often requires going into a JSON file and coding something. That's something that we can do in collaboration with someone and then allow them to use our MyCato configuration portal to be able to install a new release. So if somebody knows, and over a Zoom session, we can teach somebody how to configure the code if it's not in the user interface. So we can collaborate and do that and support it and it'll work. But our hope over the next year is that our user interface is going to give people the ability to configure those things for devices that don't have their own user interface. And did you say you had two questions?
Yeah. So then you said that currently it can only connect to one device at a time. What's the process for like connecting it via Bluetooth and then switching to another device currently?
Okay, two parts there. The device we showed at CSUN was a prototype. The device in my hand has been updated. Oops, if you can see it, it's updated and it's our production platform. And the prototype was limited to one system at a time it could interface with. And that's why Spero had to be so creative in using universal control, stage manager, all that stuff in the Apple environment. With the version we released before the next school year, people will have the ability um, to have multiple operational modes, so they can use a gesture or a tap to be able to toggle between, do I want to control my iPad or my smart TV, or am I using it as a joystick on my power chair to hack into some switch home automation system. So that will improve later this year, and it's through our configuration tool that we do a full training on when we set people up. Awesome, thank you. Joshua.
Yeah, outside of kind of everyday tasks, are there possible applications for Cato to be used in a rehabilitation setting like physical therapy?
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for that. There are scenarios where people have degenerative conditions, and what we try to counsel or coach on is the importance of learning to use it while you can, so that it can work for you as your condition changes. There are cases where people have spinal cord injuries and their abilities are kind of consistent, but they might need to supplement their ability with another device. And so the case of someone who can use a rollerball mouse to tap, but they could use Cato to toggle and do other things, they can work in conjunction. And Josh, specific to your question, in a rehabilitation environment in physical therapy, if someone's going through, say there's been an accident, someone's lost a limb, they're rehabilitating, and they're learning how to get back to what's functional for them. You can think of it as a crutch. So while they're learning to do some things, they can use Cato to interface with the iPad that they're doing their exercises with and other things. And that's, a part of the value of a $100 device is that if somebody's going to use it as they go through a 6-week or a 12-week rehab cycle, it can just be available in the facility for other people to use as necessary as well. Thanks. We've run a little long. I'd be thrilled to take another question if anybody had one, or we can stick on after and dive into more questions you guys may have.
I don't have a question, but I have a note, a thought.
Yes.
You said you were looking for a name for the woman in the artwork, and
yes.
I wanted to put forward the idea of Molly, because Ollie, just a little slight M in front of it. Her
Molly
name
of Ollie.
Exactly.
I like it. We'll talk about it.
Yeah, I was thinking like Katie, because it's like Cato.
Oh, I like that one as well.
Like it. All right. All right. All right. We'll talk more. There might be multiple t-shirts to hand out for good ideas. Thank you all for diving in. Thanks for your attention. Excited to see what we come up with this summer. And hopefully each of you will be part of more videos we post on our YouTube channel as we continue to prototype some ideas and to get some feedback on things. So thanks so much for your time. I'm going to stop recording